Good morning again. Welcome to the 4th International Conference on National Evaluation Capacities and the 2015 IDEAS Global Assembly. I believe we have everybody on board. It is very nice. For the ones of you that don't know me, I am Ana Rosa Soares. I am an evaluation advisor for the UNDP, Independent Evaluation Office, but I'm also the NEC coordinator and the person responsible for the partnerships with IDEAS. So I'll be your master of ceremonies today. Okay, so I'm going to start by calling our guests to the podium, to the stage. We'll start with Mr. Luc Stevens, United Nations Resident Coordinator and United Nations Development Program Resident Representative in Thailand. I will call Mr. Rob D. Vandenberg, President of the Evaluation Association, IDEAS. Mr. Indra Naidu, Director of the Independent Evaluation Office of the United Nations Development Program. Mr. Nopadon Tepitak, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Thailand. Ms. Gina Casar, United Nations Undersecretary General and United Nations Development Program Associate Administrator. Ms. Mallika Samaranayake, President of the Community of Evaluators of South Asia. Okay, so our first speaker will be Mr. Luc Stevens. You may take the podium.
Good morning to all of you. Your Excellency, Kun Nopadon, Deputy Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ms. Gina Casar, Undersecretary General and UNDP Associate Administrator, Excellencies, Excellencies in the room, ladies and gentlemen, and dear colleagues. Good morning. Welcome to this 4th International Conference on National Evaluation Capacities and the International Development Evaluation Association Global Assembly 2015. First of all, let me thank the Royal Thai government for hosting this event. And I would also like to congratulate my UNDP colleagues, the Independent Evaluation Office, the UNDP Regional Bureau for Asia and the Pacific, and the Bangkok Regional Hub for bringing the participants around the world together here in Bangkok. The year 2015 has become a decisive year for all of us. World leaders, as we all know, came together at the UN Summit and adopted a new set of 17 Sustainable Development Goals just 1 month ago. Evaluation is part of this new agenda, indicating that the follow-up and the review processes of implementation of the post-2015 development agenda will be informed by country-led evaluations and data. Simultaneously, the global evaluation community is celebrating the International Year of Evaluation to advocate and promote evaluation and evidence-based policy making at international, regional, national, and also local levels. So the importance of evaluation has never been so emphasized globally. But this year is particularly important to Thailand in relation to the Sustainable Development Goals. The Royal Thai government is currently developing the 12th National Economic and Social Development Plan for the period 2017-2021. And the United Nations country team in Thailand is also in the rollout process of the new UN partnership framework for the same programming period in close collaboration with the government. Needless to say that the Sustainable Development Goals determine the focus of our next UNPAF here in Thailand. Evaluation definitely continues to be a key component of the framework because it is crucial to assess how our work, programs, and policy advice contribute to development results, and also to measure effectiveness, transparency, and accountability. So I'm certain that this conference will become a great opportunity where you can all share your experiences and knowledge and best practices, and the discussion will certainly lead to identify key priorities of national capacities in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So once again, welcome to all of you here in Thailand and to this conference, and I wish you all the best for the next 3 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. I call now Mr. Rob Vandenberg, President of IDEAS.
Thank you. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, and I see only distinguished guests and friends. As President of the International Development Evaluation Association, it is an honor for me to welcome this distinguished audience to the Global Assembly 2015, which we are very happy to organize in parallel with the 4th NEC conference. Let me especially acknowledge the presence of our co-host, DFID, represented by Penny Hawkins. Many thanks, Penny, for your strong support and involvement. I would also like to acknowledge our many donors recognized in our program. Thanks to them, we were able to offer sponsorships to a record number of participants from the Global South. The International Development Evaluation Association is the only global evaluation association for individual members. It is also the only association focusing on development evaluation. It exists since 2002, when IDEAS was born in Beijing, in this region. Currently, we have around 1,000 members from many countries all over the world. Our aim is to work at professional norms and standards, at capacity empowerment, and exchange of knowledge and experience. We are a truly global network, a community of practice on evaluation of development. Our biennial global assemblies provide us with a platform to meet and discuss current developments. In our current series, this is the 4th such assembly. All 3 previous assemblies have led to authoritative publications, often cited, edited by my predecessor, Dr. Ray Rist. Many of you will have received a copy of the book emerging out of the previous assembly. Unfortunately, we have not been able to share copies with all of you, as we are overwhelmed with the magnet that the 2 parallel conferences have turned out to be. This assembly is beyond our expectations, and also, I have to confess, beyond our financial capability to provide copies to all present. My apologies for this. As IDEAS, we believe this is a pivotal time. The world is changing fast around us. In September, as mentioned by Luc Stevens, we have seen the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals in New York. They represent a paradigm shift that has not yet begun to sink in. Development is changing from a sector-oriented, often issue-focused effort to an effort to integrate economic, social, and environmental concerns to achieve growth and poverty alleviation that would be equitable and sustainable. They include the perspective that we need to leave a planet for future generations that will provide for their needs. At this Global Assembly, evaluation professionals will discuss 2 major challenges in my perspective. The first one is that the concept of development is changing dramatically. The Sustainable Development Goals have a universal meaning and are aspirational for all countries. They recognize that all countries should unite behind these common goals. We cannot split the world into 3 worlds anymore. The SDGs do not recognize a first world, a second world, and a third world. So what has remained? What are we to call ourselves? To turn the world into an economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable one, we need to recognize that in the new paradigm, all countries in the world are developing countries. So this is our first major challenge. The second major challenge is on evidence. The current focus on evidence that evaluations may bring to support or change policies and programs is often on what works here and now. Taking the needs of future generations into account, we also need to find evidence on what works there and then. We have many excellent and rigorous scientific tools and methods available to do this. We have sciences that look into the distant past, like astronomy, archaeology, and geophysics. We have scientific theories and tools that look into the future, like risk assessments, rigorous scenarios, systems analysis. As evaluators, we need to start incorporating them. As policymakers and parliamentarians, you will need to open up for the evidence that emerges out of these new tools for evaluation. We need to have evidence both for the here and now and for the then and there. Our aim is to translate our discussions into insights that can be incorporated into the Global Evaluation Agenda 2016-2020. And I leave you thus with two challenges. In the perspective of the SDGs, all nations are developing nations. And we need to accept evidence on what works then and there on top of what works here and now. I wish you all a very good conference, both in the 4th NEC and in the 4th Global Assembly, and in our joint sessions. Many thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Rob. We're now going to watch a very short video on the NEC journey.
2 years ago, at a gathering similar to this one, I stressed the importance of strengthening evaluation. Since then, I have been pleased to see that not only the United Nations evaluation group, but also member states and evaluators from around the world have risen to the challenge.
Institutional building and capacity building is not so easy to measure and to quantify, but are essential for sustainable development and for the sustainability of whatever gains we have in the short term.
Part of our work is not just to be inward-looking, and we take very seriously how we support governments. So over the last 6 years, we have an initiative called the National Evaluation Capacity, which focuses on working with government.
The goal of the NEC conferences is to support the development of national evaluation capacities by focusing on supporting the governments with which UNDP works with around the world. They provide a forum for discussion of evaluation issues confronting countries and enable participants to draw on recent and innovative experiences of other countries and develop South-South and triangular partnerships for evaluation. Since 2009, biannual NEC conferences have been organized by the Independent Evaluation Office of UNDP in partnership with host governments. These conferences are a part of a broader architecture in which UNEC plays a significant role by bringing together UN agencies and development partners to collaborate with each other and enhance the understanding and appreciation of evaluation as a powerful tool of public accountability and learning. This year being Eval Year, the NEC conference will focus on how governments can develop the necessary national evaluation capacities to evaluate the new Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. Deliberations will be documented in the 2015 NEC Bangkok Declaration and feed the Global Evaluation Agenda to support the post-2015 Development Agenda, the SDGs. We welcome you to the 4th International Conference on National Evaluation Capacities.
Thank you. Okay. We will be passing around a copy of the draft Declaration of Bangkok, so you can also provide comments, and we'll be discussing the declaration throughout the next 3 days. I now call to the podium Mr. Indran Naidu.
Excellency, distinguished guests and friends, I would like to welcome you all to the 4th International Conference on National Evaluation Capacities, which we proudly do in partnership with the International Development Evaluation Association, Global Assembly 2015. This fortuitous association, triggered by my long association with IDEAS, has ignited valuable synergies for both UNDP and IDEAS as we blend our relative strengths and capacities for advancing development. Bringing success to an event of this magnitude requires support, and I must with gratitude acknowledge the invaluable support provided by the Royal Thai government, whom have been gracious hosts and allow us all to now personally experience the wonderful hospitality of this beautiful country. Thank you, sir. At the UNDP Global event, the conference has benefited from the support of the UNDP Regional Bureau for Asia and the Pacific and its Bangkok hub, ensuring the full participation of UNDP and its government partners at this historic event, the largest by government participation and country representation in the year of evaluation. My personal thanks goes to the Regional Director, Mr. Haoling Zhu, and Mr. Nicholas Rossellini for walking this journey with us, and our resident coordinator, Mr. Luc Stevens, for their critical support. Thank you so much. We are also honored to have in attendance Ms. Gina Casar, Under Secretary General and Associate Administrator for UNDP. We shall miss our evaluation champion and wish her well as she moves on to a new calling as head of Mexico's Development Cooperation Agency. Breaking records on many fronts means that the diverse spectrum of participants, networks, institutions, and governments gives us an unparalleled program in terms of richness and diversity, making this both the largest United Nations evaluation and global development evaluation event ever. For the first time in an event of this nature, we have the 3 evaluation networks that cover the globe and their leaders: the United Nations Evaluation Group, UNEC, Marco Sagoni; the Evaluation Cooperation Group of the Multilateral Development Banks, Caroline Hyder; and the OECD Group, EvalNet of countries, Penny Hawkins. Their presence here today clearly shows that we have brought together our relative strengths and advantages. I must also thank the government of Finland, the bank for the financial support for the NEC conference, as well as new support that has come from the International Initiative for Impact Evaluation, 3IE, the UN Evaluation Network, UNDP, and the Thailand Evaluation Network. We are especially pleased that we have over 100 countries registered and more than 60 UNDP staff in attendance, reflecting the organization's commitment to knowledge development. In addition, let me acknowledge and express appreciation to the government officials from countries who have participated in the series of NEC conferences. We have 42 new countries with us this year. All this makes this event the United Nations of Evaluation. We are gathered here today at the very start of a new era with an ambitious set of goals for sustainable development agreed to by heads of state last month. The 2030 agenda builds on and expands beyond the preceding MDGs, challenging us all with greater complexity as well as new standards of inclusiveness, ownership, and universality. Not only in the age of big data, 24-hour news cycle, and social media, citizen interest, and expect SDGs, our collective development challenges, and achieving progress across each of the 17 SDGs and 169 targets will require tremendous effort. We in the development evaluation community must do our part, and we must not forget that informed, people-centered evaluation techniques are not an alternative, but integral to the strengthening of the institutions that support development. Undertaking our function recognizes multiple and variable jurisdictional needs and expectations, and we must remember our legitimacy through independence and ultimately accountability to those impacted by development interventions. It is essential that governments and civil society have the opportunity to reflect on what is working and what is not, and at what cost, and to then use this information to become more prudent, efficient, and effective in the delivery of public services. The last NEC conference focused on the importance of developing independent, credible, and useful evaluations for effective development and legitimacy, and evaluators should not lose sight of the political context within which we and those we assess operate. The SDGs clearly spell out what their ideals and goals are and require evaluators and the development community to engage with many more interrelated, complex, and challenging issues, meaning we need to be competent at many levels, and these conferences contribute to these capabilities. If evaluators are to give voice to people and countries where inequalities persist at multiple levels, the development and SDG context must be understood to contain a vision that combines a human capability approach to development with modern reconstruction of traditional economic models of growth. In responding to the SDGs, focus on inequality and, in service to the principle of no one left behind, the evaluation function can bring methodological validity as well as legitimacy. Evaluation helps to empower people, as effective evaluation processes help social action for development. In the next few days, we are considering a Bangkok Declaration on Principles, National Evaluation Capacity for the SDGs. Your inputs will be valued as declaration language is revised. Its strategic value will be derived from brevity and adherence to principles. At the final session of the conference, we will put the further revised text to this assembly for consideration, with the hope that it captures the values and principles of evaluation blended with the aspirations of the Sustainable Development Goals. After our first keynote address today, the evaluation torch will be passed from the Brazilian government, the host of the last NEC conference in Sao Paulo 2 years ago, to the Royal Thai government. On Friday, we close the event. The Royal Thai government will hand the torch and the Bangkok Declaration to the governments of Nepal and Eval Partners, the co-hosts of the last Eval Year event to be held in Kathmandu in November. Thank you all for your presence.
Thank you, Indran. I now call our evaluation champion in UNDP, Ms. Gina Casar, Undersecretary General and United Nations Development Program Associate Administrator.
Excellency Nopadon Tepitak, Deputy Permanent Secretary, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, it is a very special honor to welcome you all to the 4th International Conference of National Evaluation Capacities. Let me extend our sincere gratitude to the Royal Government of Thailand for their generous support with the preparations for this important event and for the kind hospitality extended to all participants. I would like to welcome all the delegates representing more than 100 countries and thank their governments for the commitment in fostering evaluation capacity development in support of accountability, learning, and good governance. Let me also give special thanks to IDEAS for partnering with the UNDP in the important endeavor, and thank our Independent Evaluation Office and UNDP colleagues for their efforts in supporting this conference. This conference marks the International Year of Evaluation and is a major milestone for renewed attention to the need of strengthened national evaluation capacities. The title of the conference, Blending Evaluation Principles with Development Practices to Change People's Lives, resonates very well with a new role that evaluation should play in shaping and contributing to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals in the next 15 years. As other speakers have already mentioned, last month, world leaders gathered at the United Nations headquarters in New York and adopted the Agenda 2030 and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, a roadmap for a world free of poverty, promoting peace and dignity, and environmental sustainability. The Agenda 2030 sets very high and ambitious targets, which will require national commitments and efforts in effective development plans. In this regard, capacities will become and implementation using high-quality evidence in measuring progress and documenting decisions. These systems will play a significant and critical role in helping countries to assess whether their national development policies and plans remain aligned with the domestic SDG priorities. We are very proud of the prominent role played over the past decade in supporting the national. Building on the lessons learned from the MDGs, we stand ready to work together with you and contribute knowledge and expertise to the development of national capacities for evaluating progress against the SDGs. Timely, well-designed, and effectively conducted evaluations unquestionably enhances the quality of public investments and is a key governance tool to support greater transparency, accountability, and learning. We believe that accountable and efficient institutions that are guided by evidence-based decisions are a vital part of what it takes to remain relevant to our people and to make the global system more resilient. Investments in development generate lessons that evaluation can capture and share further, including through South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation, which is a powerful mechanism to ensure that countries everywhere have access to knowledge and solutions. Learning from our experiences and acting upon evidence are important sustainability safeguards that we want to integrate in our SDG work. To echo the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, quote, implementation of the post-2015 development agenda will require renewed efforts by all governments to strengthen public institutions by enhancing the responsiveness and accountability in order to meet growing demands on service delivery. Governments must therefore be ready to innovate and develop effective, accountable, participatory, and transparent institutions at all levels. End of quote. The evaluation function can be the key to capturing these national challenges, and UNDP is eager to contribute. For the MDG implementation, UNDP partnered with national authorities to produce over 500 MDG country reports for scorekeeping. Likewise, the UN Secretary General has agreed that UNDP should now play the same role with the national reporting on the SDGs within the framework of the Global Partnership on Sustainable Development Data. As convener of the United Nations Development Group, UNDG, UNDP will be rolling out a package of tools and services to support governments as they localize, review, and evaluate their progress against the SDG agenda. In the first instance, we have adopted a common approach entitled MAPS, which stands for Mainstreaming, Acceleration, and Policy Support. Mainstreaming is about supporting governments to include the SDG in plans, strategies, and budgets. Acceleration of progress on key goals and targets is a priority, and we will build on our experience with MDG acceleration in more than 50 countries. The World Bank has been an important partner in this acceleration, and we hope this collaboration will continue in the SDGs agenda. We will make coordinated policy and technical support available to countries at their request, drawing on the expertise and programmatic experience of the UN development system. The issues to be discussed at this conference are significant and timely, and I believe that we will succeed in setting key priorities for the global evaluation agenda. UNDP will launch in 2016 a global initiative for supporting development of national evaluation capacities. I am confident that our traditional and emerging partners will be joining us in this endeavor that will be further enhanced by South-South cooperation among developing countries for viable solutions and rapid progress. We wish to ensure of UNDP's support in the pursuit of our first universal agenda for shared prosperity in a safer world. This is an essential journey that we embarked on together, and that we need to complete together to honor our commitments to leave no one behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Casar. I now would like to call Mr. Paulo Januzzi, National Secretary of Evaluation in the Brazilian Ministry of Social Development and Fight Against Hunger, the co-host of the 2013 NEC conference, to hand the Evaluator torch over to Mr. Nopadon Tepitak, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand.
Ms. Gina Casar, UN Secretary General and Associate Administrator of the UNDP. Excellencies, Mr. Luc Stevens, UN Resident Coordinator, distinguished participants. On behalf of the Royal Thai Government, I'm honored to represent my Foreign Minister in welcoming all of you to Thailand and to the 4th International Conference on National Evaluation Capacities. I would like also to convey his regrets for missing this important conference due to unforeseen circumstances. Let me also thank the IEO, the UNDP, and other partners who are co-hosting the 4th NEC with the Thai government. I'm honored to accept, on behalf of the Thai government, the Evaluator torch from the government of Brazil. This torch symbolizes the global effort to promote evaluation and to formulate a global evaluation agenda. Thailand is proud to be a torch bearer and do our part to support the global evaluation process. This conference is timely. This year marks the International Years of Evaluation. Our leaders have just adopted the 2030 Agenda in New York. The attainment of the 17 goals and 169 targets of the Sustainable Development Goals is a daunting task. Effective monitoring and evaluation will be essential to ensure that our work is progressing in the right direction. We will need stronger partnership amongst everyone involved. In this regard, I'm pleased to note that in parallel to this conference, the second interagency expert group on SDGs indicators is also being held at the United Nations in Bangkok during 26 to 28 October. Thailand will spare no efforts in developing our national evaluation capacity to support the SDGs. After Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha returned from the UN Sustainable Development Summit in New York last month, he chaired the first meeting of the National Committee for Sustainable Development, during which he stressed the need to address the data challenge. This is therefore our hope that this conference can show us how to strengthen our national capacity for data collection so that we can effectively track our progress towards the SDGs. At the New York summit, Prime Minister Prayut and many other leaders highlighted the importance of developing data, especially disaggregated data, for policymakers to make better policies based on evidence. When forming our national policies for the SDGs, we must leave no one behind. Building national capacity to develop data is therefore vital to help us reach and include those who are more vulnerable to being left out from the benefit of the SDGs. To make the development process inclusive, transparent, and accountable, all stakeholders, including the public, private sector, and civil society, must be able to understand how it works. Evaluation provides evidence for the success or failure of development policies. The good governance dimension of evaluation is another reason why the Royal Thai government gives priority to building an effective and credible evaluation systems. Distinguished participants, given our diverse levels of development, we all face different challenges in evaluating sustainable development. We face different risks and uncertainties, as well as different economic, social, and environmental dimensions. We also have different levels of resources and expertise. Standardized measurements and yardsticks may not do justice to all countries. The question is, how can we come up with evaluation systems that are balanced, impartial, and reflect the reality on the ground? The Global Evaluation Agenda 2016 to 2020 will be a complex and demanding task. I'm glad that this conference is bringing together a diverse group of stakeholders to discuss innovative solutions to evaluation challenges. We have a lot to learn from one another. Thailand is ready to learn from our friends as well as to partner with others through South-South and Tangura cooperation. I wish you great success in your deliberations, and I look forward to hearing about the result. And I take this opportunity to hereby declare open the 4th International Conference on National Evaluation Capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now invite the panel to take a seat in the audience for the keynote address. Thank you. And I call to the podium to deliver the keynote address on evaluation for improving people's lives, Ms. Mallika Samaranayake, President of the Community of Evaluators of South Asia.
Thank you, Anna, for these nice comments. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, friends, I consider it as an honor and a privilege to have this opportunity of addressing all of you here today who are partners in development evaluation, coming from various sectors, from various disciplines, but with a common theme of contributing to development evaluation in the long run. So, I will just refer very briefly to some of the things that were expressed by the previous speakers as well. Just bringing in to our minds, bringing back to our minds the context in which these two conferences are held today. Year 2015 seems to be a magic year. It came to be recognized as the International Year of Evaluation. And why 2015? Well, that marks the end of the Millennium Development Goals. This year is therefore very unique in that sense. At the same time, we are coming up with another set of development goals, which are called the SDGs, as you know, the Sustainable Development Goals. And in this process, we need to develop global partnerships. And I would look at this conference as an ideal example of global partnership in the development evaluation arena. The NEC conference and the IDEAS conference, both are converging and making it possible for development evaluation to take effect. We will go into a little bit of details later. For the time being, the Global Evaluation Agenda 2016 to 2020, that is only the first phase of the 15-year period. And for that, all of us here today is going to lay the foundation. We are beginning the evaluation of Sustainable Development Goals starting this year. And the discussions during the conferences will identify future priorities for the Global Evaluation Agenda 1620 to help evaluate the new Sustainable Development Goals. It will be launched at the Eval Partners Global Evaluation Week, organized at the Parliament of Nepal in November 2015. And there again, we have international partnerships developed. We from Community of Evaluators South Asia, we are hosting that event in collaboration with Eval Partners. So therefore, we are paving the way for international partnerships. These are not things that can be done by one organization or one sector of the population. It is a commitment by all of us, and therefore the need for participation and building partnerships more and more. Well, a wee bit of the background of the NEC conference. What it means is improving people's lives by integrating evaluation principles with human development practices. That is what the NEC conference is committing itself. Coming to the Ideas Conference, they are evaluating sustainable development. So you cannot take these two separately. The two initiatives complement each other in contributing to the final goal of improving people's lives. That is what we are committing to. And we will discuss how this conference is going to address this specific requirement, that is of improving people's lives. Challenges which are complex and context in these discussions, and what you will be coming up with as suggestions and priorities for the EVAL agenda, that is 1620, the first phase I am taking. Let's look at a little bit on what these MDGs are doing and what are the implications for making this happen. Making happen what? It is the NEC and Ideas Conference focus on blending evaluation principles with human development practices for improving people's lives. What are the questions we need to deal with? Will the Sustainable Development Goals empower evaluators to provide evidence that lives of people are improved in a more sustainable way? That's a question we need to answer at this conference. A second question, will this paradigm shift towards sustainability ensure that people can achieve a balance between their economic, social, and environmental needs for the present and the future? So it's a challenge for us to come up with ideas that will help. Again, I have tried to conceptualize the contribution that these two conferences can make towards improving people's lives. Well, we have two sides to this story, as any story would have. And one side is the demand aspect of it, and the other side is the supply aspect of it. And you can see that on the demand side, we have to look at the policy framework, regulatory mechanisms and data systems, stakeholders' commitment to use, and I will go into details later. On the supply side, we had to look at what kind of approach have we got to use in this whole process, what kind of methodology, who are the stakeholders involved, and then of course we come to just what the NEC conferences are trying to do, capacity building of institutions, evaluators, and all those stakeholders that matter in evaluation. Because we may create a demand by creating awareness, but when the demand comes up, if we are unable to meet that demand and supply the services that are needed, we have a very big gap to fill. So these both sides of the story we need to accomplish if we are to contribute to improving people's lives. Look at this. Okay. This one. we are harmonizing or integrating principles of evaluation into the demand side as well as to the supply side. And some of the key ones only I have mentioned here: inclusion of the excluded, and gender equity, human rights, integrity and ethics, accountability and good governance. And what are we doing here? All of us at the NEC and IDEAS conferences, we focus on blending evaluation principles with human development practices for improving people's lives. Let's see how we can make it. Just looking at the demand side of evaluation, we first look at the national level. The national level at the national level, we have to look at national policy that promotes ownership and use of evaluation findings. And you, as you know, national evaluation policies at country level is a key aspect of contributing to these goals. There was this Eval Partner study, which was undertaken in 2013, and 115 countries were reviewed with regard to availability of national policies, and we found that only 20 countries have legislated policies. All the other countries out of this 115, this is not all the countries in the whole world, but only a selected sample. Even there, we are still in the process of proceeding towards national policies, legislated policies, step by step. Some have monitoring systems, some have some kind of monitoring and evaluation, some have units at the central level, some have units of monitoring and evaluation at ministry and other department levels. Then we need to promote advocacy at country and global level for the formulation of national legal framework and operationalization. The Eval Partners Global Forum that is envisaged for November this year, as we mentioned before, I think is a step in the right direction, because we are trying to involve the policymakers themselves. Up to now, what have we been doing? We have been building capacities of government officers, basically. Secretaries of ministries, the departmental heads, we have been bringing them more often to think that if we build their capacities, that political will remain. Political will not remain like that. We have to include politicians or the parliamentarians themselves if we need to have a policy impact on what is envisaged for countries' development. Then, okay, so at national level, I'm sorry about that. Yeah. So this paradigm shift from donor-driven evaluations to country-owned joint evaluations took place with the Paris Declaration evaluation that we did some time back. And the international, global, and donor-level cooperation and partnerships were the focus of that evaluation. Paris Declaration evaluation for aid effectiveness, 21 countries were involved in this. Not everybody joined the thing. And phase 1 was setting up the indicators, the baselines. Phase 2 was actually assessing whether or evaluating the success of these initiatives. This paradigm shift from donor-driven evaluations to country-owned joint evaluations was the main focus at the Paris Declaration evaluation. And I can speak about it because I was also part of the core group of evaluators, and I was responsible for coordinating 11 countries in in Asia and the Pacific. So we had only 21 countries, all from the South, because the concept was that we are trying to help the donors to understand the priorities at the country level and the national levels. I will tell you, it was not easy. To speak to the governments who were thinking that this is only a donor's task, and when we sign an agreement, we only tick off an evaluation. That is what happened. And it was quite an effort to get it the way around. So as promoted by the Paris Declaration evaluation for aid effectiveness and followed up by the Accra and Busan agendas, emphasize the need for international cooperation to make it happen, in which their priorities reflect the priorities of the people. That's what we thought. Just as the SDGs are thinking of improving people's lives, at that time we were thinking the national governments reflect the priorities of the people. Anyway, after the breakthrough, and what was the emphasis during that time? In the context of the Paris Declaration evaluation strategy, the donor countries were expected to support the developing countries to have country-led evaluations. That was the focus. And ownership, alignment, harmonization, results, mutual accountability were the key aspects of it. In the context of SDG, it is necessary to assess how such goals are realized in the developed world as well. That's the big paradigm shift, I would say. So we are not just looking at donor countries trying to help the developing countries. All countries are involved in the SDGs. So it's a very big challenge for all of us. And it is adopted by all countries. That is the significant factor in SDGs. Now that international cooperation is experiencing this further paradigm shift towards supporting sustainable development goals, how can evaluation contribute in providing evidence of such support for measuring the sustainable development goals? That's the challenge that we are going to face with. Okay. I'm looking at implications for community participation. Because when you say people's lives, it is the community. We cannot underestimate the role of the community. So community means for the community to express their views, we have to have an environment where political will should prevail positively for the use of evaluation findings and providing a space for the involvement of the people. There is a political and public demand to look for, I think this was said before also by our president of IDEAS, saying that you are looking for outright answers. Politicians can't wait. We need a solution right now, just now. But SDGs tell us, no, that is not the end in itself. It is only a means to sustainability in the future. So that is a big change. The work that does influence policy is often unique and rarely repeated or replicated. We can't do one piece of research, one evaluation of one program and say, okay, we can replicate these learnings to the other projects. It's not like that. It's so very unique and related. Space should be provided for voices of the people to be heard. I'm asking this question, are we doing it? I have this example for you from the field. I was asked to moderate a workshop for strategic planning of a project called crop stock integration. So it is in the agricultural sector, cultivation. Now, the commissioners of the evaluation told me, we want you to do this strategic planning workshop. I asked the simple question, who are the people who are participating in this process? Then they were telling me, well, the project staff, then the donor representatives, your country representatives. Then I said, I feel that there is a very big gap here. Something is missing. If you are doing strategic planning, for whom are you doing it? Who are going to implement it? Of course, it's the farmers. So where are the farmers in this whole process? There was no answer. You'll be surprised to hear the answer. What they told me was, well, this is going to be in a big hotel, 5-star hotel, and farmers will be very uncomfortable. We want to conduct in English medium, and they will not be able to participate. I said, I'm sorry, I'm unable to take up this assignment. Unless you will see that farmers participate. Translation is not a problem. I can do it from Sinhala to English, English to Sinhala, anytime. Then they said, let's think about it, we'll come back to you. They came back in 1 week's time and said they found 2 farmers who also had some knowledge of English. I said, all right, let's go ahead. Now we are doing the strategic planning exercise discussions. Everything was predetermined. And there was a fund called a fund for goat farming. A fund for goat farming. Oh, sorry. Fund for goat farming, that one. And the farmers raised their hands. Then I asked, why are you so dissatisfied? You had a very, dissatisfied face. We don't want goat farming. Then I asked, why? Because we are working in the dry zone. And these goats will start licking right down to the roots of these plants, and agriculture is a basic livelihood. We cannot have these fellows destroying the crops. One reason. Second reason, goats are for flesh, and we don't want to kill animals. See how the culture and the context comes in to the picture of evaluation. And then the third is, even if we rear them for milk, our children don't like goat milk. And we don't have a market for goat milk, so it can't be a livelihood for us. Now these proposers of the project were very confused and angry. One of them ran up to the room, brought a book about this size, and said, this is the feasibility report for the project, which was done by your own ministry. Page number this says, we recommend goat farming because it's the dry zone of Sri Lanka. Now what do? They said, no, this workshop cannot allow these other views to come in. It is already pre-planned. You have no mandate to change what has been planned. So where is the voice of the people, I'm asking? How can you improve lives of people? I said, I'm the moderator. And I'm going to very well record that this is what the farmers feel, and this is what you all had planned. And then they said, we have to take it to our principals because they are the donors, they're spending the money. I said, fine. Let them look at what farmers feel about it. They wanted not goats, but cattle. Then they said, there's no fodder for cattle during the dry season. And the farmers said, we know, we have been doing it generations and generations, and we know how to preserve pasture for the dry season. And that is the technique that we have with us. The haystacks and all silos, these are there available for us. So we don't want goat farming. So that's how it was. Because that was an area, religious, they were Buddhists basically, so they didn't want to rear animals for killing. That was one thing. So we were insensitive in our planning process to what the people wanted. Okay. So with that, I like to proceed. This is just one example. There are plenty of examples where we are not listening to the voice of the people. So this means we need to have a methodology and an approach that addresses this. Methodological rigor to enable people's voice. So those are some pictures which show that. You can see in those pictures nobody is looking at the photographer, which means they are involved in that process of analysis. See how proud they are to say what they want to say. This is institutional analysis, which is assessing the importance of organizations, as most of you know, who are familiar with participatory methodology. I have another very nice anecdote from this. When the people, when the people assessed the different organizations that are helping the community at the village level, they had this district officer. We call, in Sri Lanka, we call the divisional secretariat officer. That is the most viable planning unit that we have. And below that is the village level. And they put that person as a very small circle in this institution analysis, and the distance by the line that is drawn is the closeness to them. So far away from the center of the villages, and a very small circle for the divisional secretariat officer. And then I thought it's a good opportunity to convey this message. At the end of that evaluation or the assessment, we invited the divisional secretariat officer to come as the chief guest. He was very happy to accept it, and he was there. And now the people were describing everything that they have analyzed, and he was going round. Still they didn't know who this person was. And then when he came to this divisional secretary, they asked him, why are you putting me so small? And we are doing all the development work for you. Then they said, we have not seen that guy anywhere here. We don't know him. What we know is the person at the village level. And he takes, of course, for confirmation, certification, signatories. I don't know where they are. We don't know. They didn't know that they were talking to this officer. At the end, when he was making his final remarks, he said, I learned a lot from the people today. We are so far away from them, and I painfully realized that I have not come to this village before. So we have to address these if people's voices matter. They can teach us a lesson if you only allow them the space. Okay. Then coming into regulatory systems, that is the M&E systems with databases where we have to find evidence. Results-based monitoring and evaluation systems for providing evidence for decision making. We have to have figures to convince the government. We have to show figures not only to the government but also to the donors that this number is suffering from this particular problem and we need to assess that. So we need evidence. And when we go on with the implementation of the interventions, we also want to know whether we are progressing towards the expected goals. Act as an early, M&E systems can act as a early warning system where targets are unlikely to be achieved. Then provide regular information to all stakeholders on progress and as an informed basis or evidence for any review. Ensure the continuous sharpening and focusing of strategies and assist in initiating appropriate interventions. So that means that second point I brought out in the diagram is the regulatory framework. It has to be in place, not only policy but also the mechanisms. Then we come to stakeholder commitment. Stakeholder commitments, we have the different categories of stakeholders, as you know. I touched a little bit about decision makers and the policy makers. Influence in policy is a key important component of the international development. We discussed it a little bit earlier. Policymakers need to make informed decisions that are just and sustainable, both for people and the environment. Increasing recognition that researchers need to engage with policymakers if their work is to have wider public value. A lot of academic institutions, I'm sure there are representatives here. What do? We encourage our students to do research work, and finally, that ends up in the library of the university or research institute. These are not used, and we are spending so much money for that, yes. Right. Then increase in recognition that researchers have to engage the policymaker. Work that influence policy is often unique and rarely repeated, I said before, and not replicated. We need to involve policymakers, parliamentarians, politicians. They have emerged as a priority concern today than ever before. In this context, the efforts made by Eval partners in promoting parliamentarian forums can be seen as a step in the right direction. International cooperation for evaluation requires to lay emphasis on this fact, which is easily said than done. It is easily said than done, I'm emphasizing it. It's such a challenging thing. Decision makers, is important for decision makers to determine solutions, implement decisions, and evaluate effectiveness of the implementing program. In this context, decision makers need to commit themselves to making evidence-based solutions. Decision makers at all levels, national, subnational committee, need to be aware and sensitive to evaluation findings. Let's go to the community. We discussed a little bit about the community. What is more important in the context of sustainable development goals is the involvement of the people themselves, as the final goal is improving people's lives. Look at this one very quickly. This is a finding from an impact evaluation of the tsunami that happened some time back. What do? At the relief stage, I agree with you that we can't be doing needs assessments and all that. Food, clothing, and shelter is the most important. But we are not at relief all the time. We have to go for rehabilitation, reconstruction. And our benevolent philanthropists. This is what they did to these people. This family, they lost their house income earner. The husband of this lady is, this is the lady. Her husband got killed in the tsunami. The boat was perished, the house was perished. They got a house, and that had a tin roof where they couldn't live inside. For 2 weeks, they had to again camp outside till some tiles were done. So you see the short decisions that we take and not thinking of what it happened. I thought in her mind it was running that if I only had something to cook in one of these pans, that would have helped me to support the family. You know what she's doing now? She's selling what we call string hoppers. It's something like noodles, packeted. And that, her livelihood. She lost the boat. But they gave a boat, mind you. And what can she do with the boat? She doesn't know how to do fishing. So she had to hire somebody. And managing the boat and these people whom she hired was yet another hassle for her life. So where are we if people matter? Okay. Then the next part is commissioners of evaluations, another tricky thing. Commissioners of evaluation, do you think they are so independent and they are open for evaluation findings? That is also better said than done. I have my own experience. I was asked to do evaluation, end-of-term evaluation of some strengthening of local farm organizations. I visited 16 out of the 25 that they have been working with. And then the farmers were saying, this project was a failure. Why? Because they didn't give us the capacity to run our own. And now they say they are going to terminate the project. And I think, people think that that's not the right time to do. You can't drop it like a hot cake. Organizational development doesn't happen overnight. We all know that. Right. So how am I going to change this? I wrote that, well, this is how the beneficiaries think about it. And my recommendation is that you need to give a 3-year extension to this project. And then the commissioner calls me and said, Mallika, what have you done? I said, what are you talking about? No, you have scrapped on the surface and not gone into the depth of it. I went into the depth of it, and I came up with something that they don't like. They said, we already decided to terminate the project, and you're recommending that we should extend for 3 years. See the challenge. Then I took up the challenge. I said, you all better come. I will get the farmers to speak by themselves, and we did that session. They sent 2 representatives, and they were so convinced that finally, because we had evidence, quantitative and qualitative evidence to show why. And that's the thing that we can convince the commissioners, and you'll be surprised, they gave that extension of 3 years. Not only that, they asked me to go to Nepal and do a similar evaluation of a similar project. So what I mean is, our evaluators, we have to be independent, we have to be principled. That is where the principles comes, the ethics. I said, I don't want a cent of yours, you can take it, but I will not change one word of the evaluation report, because it comes from the people. Very often, commissioners, they have their own agenda, that's what I want to say. Project staff are so defensive about evaluation results. It doesn't go so smoothly. So we evaluators, we have to see, when you are doing the supply part of it, there's a long way to go, again, to make people's voices matter in the whole process. Economic, social, and environmental and sustainability means how these systems interact with each other. To manage such integration, the evaluators could provide evidence on what people need together with evidence that a particular solution would work for the present and the future. Now look at coast conservation, for example, if you look at environment. And we have these mangroves to protect the coast. But the people who live around there, what do? That is their livelihood. They cut this up for firewood. And unless you have something in as an alternative, they will not stop this. So how are we going to harmonize these various systems, social, economic, environment, which is meant by the SDG? So the methodology should be comprehensive to allow free expression of views by all stakeholders concerned. And how could this be achieved is a question I pose to you for your deliberations. You must have a look at this one. then you will realize how different stakeholders look at things differently. In this evaluation, we have used the DAC criteria: relevance, effectiveness, efficiency, sustainability, which all of you are aware of. Look what the project staff is doing. This was a score out of 5. They nicely scored themselves 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. Quite satisfied that it is very relevant. Effectiveness, same. Efficiency, same. Sustainability, just 1 mark. They are not so sure everything will continue. Look what the project staff is giving their score. Look what the beneficiaries are saying. If you do take into consideration the perceptions of the beneficiaries, they have to either review and restructure their own project. Of course, don't think it is only putting marks. It is not only putting marks, but also reasons. They have to give reasons why they give 3, or why they give 2, or why they give 5. And that is a qualitative analysis of the evaluation, which is evidence to change views. Then field building, that especially evaluation for field building, it is uncontested. The previous speaker said that NEC means National Evaluation Capacity Building. So that part is from the supply side, and you are very well on it. Then competencies of evaluators have to be built up. Not only evaluators, but also evaluating organizations. That is coaching, training, experience in conducting evaluations, use of tools and techniques appropriately, exchange of experiences among peers and different projects. Institutional capacities require attention of the participants of this conference. Change that strengthens the organization's standing you have to look at and build it into the eval agenda that we are preparing. Ability to address the demands from the state, civil society, private sector, and the community. Then principles of evaluation, yes, of course you know that, as I showed in that first diagram. Conference participants could reflect on the principles and suggest strategies to ensure integration with human development practices to be included in the Global Evaluation Agenda 1620. That's your challenge. Actually, it goes to 30, but the first phase is 1620. Contribute to developing national evaluation capacities to evaluate sustainable development. So come up with suggestions in your discussion, and that will be the contribution you are making to the EVAL agenda. Okay. How do we integrate them in the evaluation process? How do we prioritize for the global evaluation agenda? That is these two, human rights and integrity and ethics. Evaluation for accountability is yet another area that you should focus on. Yes. Focus on high quality and efficiency, internal accountability and external accountability. Both equally important, and how do we capacitate and encourage evaluation? I'm posing that question to you. Then we come to evaluation for good governance. What do you think about good governance? There's bad governance also. So, the process of decision making and the process by which decisions are implemented or not implemented. Evaluation is the key to good governance. Evaluation is the key to good governance. So we cannot underestimate the value of evaluation. We have to emphasize that. Capacity building of evaluators is a necessity to provide services demanded by governance evaluation. We call it governance evaluation nowadays. Right. How do we do that? Conference participants need to review how best it could be achieved. So we wait for your suggestions at the end of it. Then, of course, you have tools like citizen scorecard, then community scorecard, citizens report card. Those are good governance tools that could be used by the community to tell the people who are administering this is what it is. Just last but not the least, now I wind up. These are ideas for you to think. What about policy change? What about bridging the gap between commissioners, practitioners, users, what I have been describing up to now, evaluation for sustainable development. Can evaluators provide evidence that improves lives of people in a more sustainable way? The shift towards sustainability ensures civil society and people achieve the balance between economic, social, and environmental needs. Using data with government to hold the state accountable and how to engage with people. The time dimension, don't forget it. People want quick results, but in the Sustainable Development Goals, we have to see long-standing results. If we can't come up with adequate evidence for that, we can at least provide indicators which reflect sustainability in the future. So we have to work towards that. Then evidence about continuity of changes, building skills on evaluation in government and all other stakeholders. What needs to be strengthened and how? That means civil societies, OPAs, and academia. What needs to be strengthened and how is what you will answer. Can the beneficiaries, the final target group, decide on their own indicators? Can they decide on their own indicators? They can, provided you provide that space for them. Farmers can just like that say what we want to achieve in the next day. What I don't have, what I want to have. They can set targets, provided you provide that space. So with that, I would like to draw your attention to all these challenges within the next few days when you will have much more time to reflect with your colleagues, sharing the knowledge. So it is not only capacity building, these two conferences are all about capacity building and creating the demand side by awareness for all the stakeholders that have come here, represented here, and also in the meantime, you're sharing. Sharing also means awareness and capacity building. So I think this partnership, this global partnership between NEC and IDEAS is a splendid example where we work together for realizing sustainable development.